Okay, so we're checking out your squash and stretch. It's a good start. We've got this little ball bouncing from one kind of pedestal to another. A few problems though. First one, which is pretty apparent, is that your ball at the beginning here is kind of floating up above, all right? And it's also quite squished in your vertical Y direction. So if the ball is, kind of in the middle of bouncing, maybe it came from over here, we don't really know what was happening beforehand in this scene. So it's possible that the ball came from over here and bounced down, and at that point, then yeah, it would be squishing. So, it's fine to leave it squished when it's, coming down right here. But we at least want to make sure that it's making contact with this sphere that's underneath it. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll just bring it down a little bit till we get to, kind of touching with that one. All right. And we'll just go ahead and key that. Translate Y right there. So that it's now, I'm going to start out touching, the other ball there. And so it's already squished down, so that's fine. If you kind of imagine it came off from somewhere over here and it's squishing and it's about to bounce again. Now, when it comes up, at the peak of its bounce, the ball should return to a perfectly round shape. Okay, and right now it's still squished. So we want to make sure that it's at that perfectly round kind of state right at the top here, because when it reaches this point, there are no more forces really pushing on the ball. So, when it was coming down from here, it was squishing down because of the force of gravity as it's hitting the ground, causing it to squish. As it climbs up, it's going to be less and less squished and return to its regular shape. So we'll just go ahead and at the peak of this jump here, we'll set our scale back to normal, which, is probably going to be 1. Okay, well, that's quite a bit bigger than it was. So you may have had it set to something like 0.5, looks like. Alright. In all directions. Something like that maybe is kind of more like what you were going for. So I'm just going to go ahead and key that scale right there. Alright. Just key it. We'll see how we're doing now. Okay. So, looks like when I did that, I went ahead and have accidentally gotten rid of the scaling that we had at the beginning here, because that was also not keyed, alright? So it was just kind of in a constant state of squished the entire time. So there wasn't actually any squash and stretch going on there. It was just kind of a squished looking ball. So let's just come back to, our first frame here, and we'll just readjust it to what we wanted, right? And we'll just squish it down a little bit. And remember, whenever you squish something like that, you also need to make up for that squish by making the circumference around here kind of flatten out a little bit and grow a little bigger, okay? That way your item isn't getting physically smaller, it's just squishing down and spreading out, okay? So let's do, I don't know, 0.55. Let's try that and see how that looks in here. 0.55. So we're just kind of growing it around the center here just a little bit, just to kind of make up for that squishing in the Y direction. So important part is, of course, to come in here and key these guys once we're happy with that, alright? The way I'm doing that, just in case you don't know, so I'm just selecting all of these and then just to right click and coming up to key selected, okay? So let's see what we've got now. We've got kind of squished, jumping up, returning to its normal shape, and then squishing back down right about here. So let's check this pose out. So obviously right now the ball is actually going a little bit through this other sphere. We don't really want it to go through it. We just kind of want it to land on top of it just like that, right? And also our scale at this point is at perfectly super round normal ball. Okay, so we'll want to squish it down again. Maybe this time, we'll squish it a little more. Let's say maybe it's impacting harder this time than it was before. So first thing I'm going to do, since I kind of have the ball where I want it to be in space, I just want to squish it down, is I'm going to move this pivot point with my scale tool here so that rather than scaling from the center, because if I do that, then I'm going to have to readjust my translate Y position here. I'm just actually going to pull this scale tool down to the bottom here. So go ahead and hold down the D key and the V key at the same time. Alright, so that's D as in dog and V as in victory. And then just click and drag this little yellow dot, your pivot point here, down to, right about there. Just right at the bottom of this sphere. And now when I use my scale Y, instead of everything kind of squishing towards the center of the object, it's all squishing down towards the bottom, right? So I'll squish that a bunch, I suppose. And so once I've done that, of course, again, I have to make sure that I spread it out in the X and Z direction. So let's do something like 0.65. Let's try that. So it's squishing down a lot right now. 0.65. Alright. Something like that. Okay. Just make sure that once you do that, you go ahead and key these items. You'll want to key your translate as well because we did move that. Alright. Let's see what we've got. So we've got bouncing up, coming nice and round, and then it's squishing down. Now, obviously there's a problem here because it starts to squish way before it actually reaches that sphere down there, so that's kind of unnatural looking. And the way that we really want it to look is for it to be falling down, and you might even want to put a little stretch right in the middle here as it's kind of gaining speed to just show off how fast it's going. And then we don't want it to squish until this very last frame here. We don't want it squishing while it's still flying. It just needs to squish as soon as it contacts that sphere. So one way to do that is to just come into your graph editor. So you'll come up to Window, Animation Editors, Graph Editor, and we're going to check out, make sure you have that sphere selected. We'll check this out here. And this squish is happening in the Y direction, which is, vertical. So we want to make sure that we're just checking out our scale Y. Now, right now it just kind of looks like this long, kind of pretty flat line. And that's just because of the way we're viewing the graph editor right now. We can actually change the way that we're looking at it so that we can see a little better what's going on. Right now it's just kind of really stretched out, so it's difficult to read. So to change it, if you're on a Mac, you're going to hold down Command-Shift and click and drag the right mouse button. If you're on a PC, it's going to be Control-Shift and click and drag the right mouse button. And so we're just going to drag this in and zoom in on it, and as you can see, the more we kind of drag it in there, the better we can kind of see this curve that's happening, whereas before it looked kind of just like a flat line. So basically down at the bottom here, this kind of represents where you are in time. And on the side here, this represents how squished down or stretched out your ball is. So the higher the number, the more stretched it is, and the lower the number, the more squished it is. So here at the very end, it's squished pretty far, okay? So, so what we said we wanted to do was for this ball to kind of remain at least in that kind of round sort of state until the very last frame where it should suddenly squish down. So what's happening right now is we have kind of this gentle curve going, where it's kind of like, oh, well, you know, I'm perfectly round, and then I'm going to squish a little bit, and then I'm going to squish kind of a lot as this curve gets more drastic, and then I'll squish just a little bit more and just kind of ease into that final position there. So instead we just want it to be round, 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 so it'll just stay in this exact same kind of scale where it's perfectly round, and then all of a sudden right here just snap to squished. And it's actually pretty easy to do. All you want to do is just grab those two keys, okay, this one where it's round and this one where it's squished down at the end, and we're going to do something called stepped mode, which basically causes us to remain perfectly flat exactly where it is until it reaches the next key, when it suddenly changes, and it causes it to look a little bit like stairs when you have a lot of keys going on, okay? And actually the little button for it here does look a little bit like stairs, so that's how you can remember step mode. Here's step tangents, and you just go ahead and click that button, and you can see now, I'll move my little time slider here so we can see a little better. Now it's perfectly flat, and then all of a sudden at this last key it's just gonna squish down. So let's check that out in our animations. Perfectly round, perfectly round, perfectly round. Okay, and squish. So, you know, you might notice that it still kind of seems like it's squishing right here. And what that is that's our scale X and our scale Z, where it's kind of flattening out and causing it to appear like it's squishing, so we haven't really adjusted those yet. So let's grab those. Here's our scale X. And again, we have this kind of curve thing going on, and we don't really want it. We just want it to be stepped. So we'll just grab those two and put them into stepped. And we'll do the same thing with Z. Just, repetitive process here. So we'll just do that. Alright, let's check our animation again. It's jumping up, it's nice and round. Staying round, 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 round. Squish. Alright? So that's kind of what you want it to look like. Now, that's all good, but we still need to add some stretch to this as well to really give our animation some pop, okay? So as it's bouncing up, right about, oh, say there, you'll actually want it to stretch just a little bit, alright? Since this kind of isn't squished down too far, the stretch won't be that drastic either. So let's go ahead and stretch it. Let's just take the scale here, and we'll we know that our regular scale Y is 0.55 for our perfectly round ball. So let's just bring it up a little bit. Just scale it just a little. Don't go overboard. And then of course, when we stretch this out, the circumference is going to kind of suck in to make up for this stretching that's happening, so that we still have kind of the same mass. All right. So let's try let's just do 0.5 for those, okay? 0.5. You know, that looks all right. Just make sure that you key these guys. Key that scale. So here we go. Let's see what happens. We've got it stretching out, returning to a normal shape, and then even right here as well as it's falling, this would be a good time for a stretch to just kind of show some speed. It gives it kind of a feeling like it's going really fast. All right. So let's add some stretch here too. Let's just kind of do the same thing we did before, where we'll just take it up a little bit. All right. We'll try something like 0.7. Let's go crazy. Stretch it out a bunch. All right. We'll do maybe 0.45 for these. Just thin it down. All right. And we'll just key that. Let's take a look at our graph editor and make sure everything's still looking pretty normal. Okay. So let's look at our scale Y here. Okay, so we got some curvy stuff going on, and and then this kind of step thing, and then this crazy curve here. Alright, so let's see how that looks. Stretching out, turning around. Now it's staying round, and then all of a sudden it's stretching out, and the reason that is because when we added that extra key, I didn't really know what to do with it, so it put this nice curve here where our kind of flat area used to be, and just made the flat area be kind of right here. So we don't want that. We want it to curve nicely into that stretch position, alright? So, it's just a matter of grabbing these and just going with something like spline tangents on the end here, alright? Nice and pretty. Alright, so let's check that out now. Bouncing up. It's nice and round, stretching out. And now it's, of course, squishing down early because we no longer have that nice flat tangent on the end. So just grab those and put them back into step mode like they were at before. Now, when I did that, you might notice that this is kind of overshooting a little bit, or it's kind of coming up above this final position. You never ever want that kind of overshoot. So you could just grab this little handle here and just pull it down so that it's a nice gentle curve that's happening right there, alright? Alright, so let's try this again. Stretching out, nice and round, stretching out again, and then boom, squish, alright? Let's also check our scale Y and our scale Z. So we have kind of the same problem going on here where we want these guys to be spline and these guys to be step, right? Don't forget to adjust this little overshoot here. Same thing here. Splines and step. And adjust that overshoot. So, that's looking great, except for the fact that as our ball is stretching, it's stretching in a vertical kind of a direction while it's heading really in sort of a diagonal direction, and that's kind of a little unnatural because you would think if it was stretching vertically, it would be traveling vertically. So we kind of need to change the rotation of the ball so that that stretch seems to be happening in kind of a diagonal direction, in the direction that the ball is traveling. So first things first, we don't have any keys on our rotation, so at the beginning we want to make sure all our rotations are 0. So we'll just key those guys right at the get-go there. And then when we come to the part where the stretch is at its peak, that's where we'll add our rotation in the direction that the ball is traveling. So it's traveling about like that, I'd say. And just go ahead and key those guys again. So when it's bouncing now, it's bouncing off in the direction it's traveling. And then it's just evening out. Well, it should be, but it's actually still kind of going that direction. We'll probably want it to just even out at this point. Alright. Just key those. So we stretch. And, that's not entirely natural for a ball, but it's probably okay for an animation like this, a pretty short little animation. So, normally you'd obviously want it to kind of keep some of that rotation value and have it sort of more something like rotating over like this, but for now that's going to be fine, just the way it is. And then it's just going to come down, and again the same problem where it's stretching kind of vertically when really it should be probably something more like this. Okay, and we'll just key those. So we got that bounce and that stretch, and then squish. Now the squish, of course, is also rotated because we haven't keyed that yet at 0. So we'll just set that to 0. Key that guy. Alright. Now it's, looking a lot cleaner already as you're kind of going through it. It's looking pretty nice. There's a lot of movement going on here because that stretch just really adds that extra kind of super speed effect. Alright, so that's it for this, and let me know if you have any questions about this. Other than that, happy animating.